So someone got you fancy something called a computer for your birthday, or perhaps for Christmas, or maybe even your anniversary. To you, however, it looks like a little box. Maybe it's one with a lid. Maybe it's big and heavy, or small and light. But whatever it is, you don't really know how to use it. How are you going to enjoy your amazing gift if you don't know what a computer is and if you don't know how to use one? I'm Kevin Kurtz, and I'm stepping in to help educate you all on what computers are, the parts you should really know about computers, and how to use computers. And this is Personal Computers from the Case Up. Now you're probably wondering, what is a computer? Well, it's not just a box. According to Merriam-Webster, a computer is a programmable, usually electronic, device that can store, retrieve, and process data. This sounds like quite a mouthful, doesn't it? I'll break it down for you. What is data? Is it words, numbers, symbols, characters? It's all of those, actually. Combinations of some of those words, symbols, characters, and numbers make up programs that have specific functions, like browsing the internet, or playing games, or even just keeping your computer up and running. Second, how does a computer remember all of this data? In the early days of computing, these programs didn't take up lots of space. Some of them consisted of less than 1,000 words. The official measurement of space, by the way, is in bits and bytes. We'll focus more on bytes since they're bigger and more important. A bit is smaller than a byte, which has just enough information to store one letter. So that means a long script like this can take up thousands of bytes, known as kilobytes. But if you look at how much information most computers store today, that amount of info ranges into the gigabytes and terabytes. 1 gigabyte is 1 billion bytes, or 1 million kilobytes, or, in other words, 1 billion characters. We need this much data due to the sheer size of programs and games today, which can often range into several billions of bytes because of how much they have to store. It's not just characters. It's images, audio, and even 3D models. And yes, art takes up a lot of space. Let's get back to the point. The thing that stores this data is a hard drive. Sometimes this may be called a solid-state drive instead, but the two are significantly different. The two main differences between the two are that solid-state drives, or SSDs, are much faster and store less data than hard drives, which are also called HDDs. The smallest SSDs are usually 240 gigabytes, while hard drives tend to start around 500 gigabytes or sometimes 1 terabyte, which is 1,000 gigabytes. That's a lot of info. However, these storage devices aren't just for writing, they're for reading. That's what makes programs run in the first place. First, your computer's processor, which processes all the info for programs, reads your storage device. The programs stored in the storage tell your processor what to do. The processor outputs the results to a screen that displays images, also known as a monitor, and then you see the results. This all sounds very technical. But in basic concept, this is just the beginning, the essentials. Doesn't our modern technology seem so fascinating? It's so advanced and so large and so amazing. Now there is another question. How do you even use this? Well, let's first teach you more about what you'll be interacting with. I've already covered things like your hard drive or solid-state drive and your monitor. The monitor displays images which are the output of your system and its processor. But how do you put in inputs into the machine? Inputs, by the way, are things you put in the machine. I'm not talking about the action of plugging in your keyboard or your mouse or whatever, but what you do with those input devices. You could be typing on a keyboard, moving or clicking a mouse or touchpad if you're on a laptop, singing into a microphone, or even using a console's video game controller. The thing is, how do you use a keyboard and mouse, which are the most common methods of input for a computer? Your keyboard should either be built into your computer, if you have a laptop, or attached as an external keyboard through a cable called a USB cable with a medium-sized rectangular plug at the end. Some keyboards have a blue circular connector, but most keyboards will use a rectangular plug. If you haven't plugged it in already, locate it on the side of your laptop or on the back of your computer and plug it into one of the available USB slots. You might need to try a few times until you get it in correctly. Once it's in, or if you already have it in, you can then start typing into your computer. If you press the letter A, your computer takes that keystroke as an input and outputs the letter A onto your screen. If you hold down the Shift key at the same time, or have caps lock on, that A will be uppercase instead of lowercase. When you feel you need to put in a space between words, hit the big space bar at the bottom center of the keyboard. If you need to search up something or send a message or make a new paragraph, press the Enter key on the right of the keyboard. You can then continue inputting letters and numbers to string together words, phrases, and sentences, including the building blocks of programs. The second component you'll be interacting with is the mouse. It's somewhat circular, but if you put it in your hand, you should find that it fits nicely, unless it's too small. Then get a bigger one. Mice generally are connected either by a cable or by a wireless receptor that both plug into a USB port like your keyboard. If your mouse is old, you might have a green circular connector, the port of which you'll find on the back of your computer, or maybe even on your laptop. But usually, they connect through one of the first two methods. Mice also usually have at least 3 buttons: the left, the right, and the middle scroll wheel. The left button serves as the button you click for most actions you want to do, like opening a program or selecting a text box, or maybe pausing or playing a YouTube video. If you double-click, you can also open up programs straight from your desktop home screen, where a selection of icons representing programs that do certain functions, like storing files you don't want, also known as the recycling bin, are located. When you click the right button, you'll usually see a menu of many different actions that you can select the computer to perform. The middle button is rarely used. However, you can use it to scroll through pages on websites, as well as text in long documents or long menus. Just simply swipe up or down on the wheel to scroll up and down. As for the touchpads of laptops, you'll usually have one large surface that you can use your fingers to scroll or click on. Move one of your fingers around the surface to move your cursor around the screen. Press down with some force in order to click. Move 2 of your fingers on the surface in the same direction to scroll through text. You may also be able to lightly tap with a single finger to click. Unless you have an Apple laptop, you should also have a left and right button for left and right clicking. If you wish to do a right click on an Apple laptop, you will need to tap with 2 fingers at the same time. Now, while inputting stuff into your machine is great, without a monitor, how are you going to see the output? That's the whole purpose of computers. Putting in an input, even an entire program's worth of it, and getting and seeing specific outputs. If you have a laptop, you don't need to worry about plugging in a monitor, but if it's a big box-like computer, sometimes called a personal computer or PC, you will need to put in a monitor. If you don't have one on hand that will plug into the back of your computer, No worries. Even a TV will work, but your user interface might look a bit big. Monitors and TVs, unlike mice and some keyboards, don't have a single devoted cable attached to them. Instead, you may have a variety of cables, even multiple at once, that you can plug into the monitor. The three most common are HDMI, DisplayPort, and VGA. The first one has moderately large plugs that look somewhat like trapezoids. The second has small plugs that are a little more rectangular in shape. And the third has a big blue plug that you also have to screw in on both ends. Tip: try using one of the first two first before you go on to VGA. This will result in a clearer, less grainy picture. Locate the correct port for your monitor cable on your monitor and plug one end in. Then, on the back of your computer, search for a port that correctly matches your cable. If there's only one set of ports towards the top on the left, plug it in there. If there are two sets, however, plug it in towards the bottom, and the second one down if there's more than two. Else, you might not get any output at all, even when the computer's turned on. And now you know about the three things that you interact with the most in or on your computer: your keyboard, your mouse or touchpad, and your monitor. On top of that, you also know how the parts of a computer work to provide you with the experience you desire. So since we're through with the tech lessons, let's get into actually using the computer. Aren't you excited? Now all we have to do is turn on the computer. If you have a laptop, this should be easy. If you have a PC though, make sure that your monitor, keyboard, mouse, and power supply are plugged in. Now, the power supply you'll see should either be one big black cable or two of these attached to a small black box. If you haven't done it already, plug in the pronged plug into the power outlet and plug in the other plug into the bottom of your computer. Remember, your computer can't run unless it has electricity to work with. If you're using a PC, don't forget to flip the power switch to on, represented by a line with the circle meaning off, before you turn on. Then you can press the power button, which combines both the line and the circle into either button on or beside your keyboard, or a distinct button on top of your PC. Then, if you have a PC, turn on the power to your monitor, or TV if you're using one of those. The monitor's power button should be located on the bottom of the monitor, not the stand, and light up an indicator when you turn it on. You don't have to worry about this if you have a laptop, though. You might see a logo pop up on the screen for a couple of seconds and then disappear. This is normal and the first thing that you'll see happen during what is called the boot up process. Then, you may see a spinning wheel or progress bar as the essential information for programs that the computer needs to run at startup loads into memory. Now, what is memory? Basically, it's a little stick where the computer can store and access data really fast when it needs it urgently for a program. It's also called Random Access Memory, or RAM for short, because its information can be accessed randomly without much of a pause, in contrast to having to take time to look through a storage drive for needed information. It can also make your computer run much faster in this sense. Back to our boot up process, depending on whether this is the first time you've started up your computer, you should see either a full screen instruction box to start setting up your computer, or the login screen. If you get the instruction box, just stay calm and follow the directions to set up your computer using your keyboard and or mouse to navigate through the options. If you see a login screen, type in a username and password for your account. Unless you haven't created a user account or you plan on using the computer as a guest. If you haven't created an account, there may be a button on this screen to create a new user account, as well as the username and password that you will be using. After you've completed either of these things, you'll most likely be greeted with your desktop, on which there will be at least an icon for the recycle bin. As stated earlier, this is where you can discard files temporarily or permanently. There will also be an image, called a background, displayed underneath these icons. You can change this background at any time with your own photos, photos you find on the internet, or photos supplied by your operating system. An operating system is a large series of programs that create a suite with a certain design and certain capabilities for running certain kinds of programs. The three main ones are Windows, Mac OS, and Linux in order of decreasing popularity and, to an extent, difficulty to use. If you're running Windows 10, the latest and probably last version of Windows, your desktop will be laid out with the taskbar and the date at the bottom and the Windows icon in the bottom left corner. Clicking this icon will take you to a pop-up menu through which you can easily access apps on your computer. Tip: if the menu has apps that you don't plan on using or don't want on your computer, you may be able to right-click the app's icon and press uninstall to uninstall the app. In your taskbar will be icons for File Explorer, indicated by a folder icon, Microsoft Edge, a fancy blue lowercase e, and the Microsoft Store, a handbag with a Microsoft logo on it. These allow you, correspondingly, to browse through your computer's files and programs, access and search the internet, and buy apps and games as well as Microsoft products. If you're running Mac OS, your main taskbar will be at the top of the screen, with the time and day in the top right corner and an Apple logo in the top left corner. Clicking this logo will bring up an array of options, mainly for things like logging out of your computer, shutting down, restarting your computer, etc. At the bottom of your screen will be a series of many icons called the dock. You will find things like Finder, Safari, the calendar, and system preferences, among many other icons, down there. The first lets you browse through your files. The second lets you browse the internet. The third tells you the month and date and lets you schedule events for certain days. And the fourth allows you to change your system settings to accommodate your preferences or handicaps. There will also be an app store indicated by a white A inside of a blue circle with a white border, through which you can download and purchase apps, or applications, which are basically just Apple's version of programs, for your Apple computer. As for Linux, I'm unfortunately a bit rusty on it. However, I recommend that if you're not already a programmer, or not willing to spend lots of time and effort setting things up and getting it working, do not use Linux. Yes, it may be free, and it may be the only truly free OS or operating system, but it can be very complicated to use at times and not quite suited for beginners. But once you've reached your desktop, you're pretty much free to do whatever you please on your computer. You can search up something online by going into your computer's web browser and typing in a query into the search bar using your keyboard, and then hitting enter once you finish typing said query. Heck, you can search for files or programs that are on your own computer through Cortana or Spotlight search. You can use the former on Windows with typed queries, or your voice if you have a microphone connected, and you can use the latter on macOS in both ways, although the one that uses your voice is called Siri. Just search for Siri in Spotlight search, and perhaps you can say, "Hey Siri," as well. You can also view photos, listen to music, play games, if your computer is powerful enough, more on that later, create text documents, make slideshows and spreadsheets, watch videos, search the web, a slang term for the internet, browse and post to social media, customize your background and themes to how you see fit, download programs and games, and maybe even immerse yourself in the realistic worlds of virtual reality. Go wild! It's your computer. And once you're done having fun or doing work on your computer for the day, or for the time being, you can click on the Windows or the Apple icon and press shut down. For Windows, you'll need to press the power button that appears in the bottom left corner before you can do this. And now you know the basics of computers, what they are, their basic parts, what you interact with, how you can interact with them, and the amazing things that they can do. And if you did actually turn off your computer, I hope you didn't turn off this podcast by accident. But no worries, this is the end of it anyway. For those of you that did turn it off, turn it back on again and start having fun with it. Explore its uses even further. And if you need further help, just ask a friend. Computers are a really fun thing, and it's been fun teaching you guys about the basics. But in the next episode, we'll start digging into computers. We're not just talking about what you interact with anymore. We're talking about what really makes your computer work. All of the internal components that work together to provide you with a good experience, and what kinds there are out there. Next time on Personal Computers, from the case up. This podcast used musical excerpts from Mir Scuba, as well as the song Extreme Action, which was used for free from Bensound. This has been Kevin Kurtz speaking. Thanks for listening in.